It defied gravity, but will it dominate the box office? We're going to talk about that and more on today's episode of the Geek Watch podcast.
This is the Geek Watch podcast with Brian Hatcher and Mandy Petry.
Greetings, Geek Watchers, and welcome to episode 236 of the Geek Watch podcast. I'm Brian Hatcher, and with me, as always, Geek Watch's very own resident geek goddess, Mandy Petry.
Hello, Brian.
So I want to start out with something that we didn't talk about last week. We had a full plate, so we didn't get around to it, but I did want to talk about The Penguin because we did get our season finale.
And how was that?
I really enjoyed The Penguin I don't know if enjoyed is the right word because in a lot of places, it's a painful watch. It's very brutal.
Captivated.
Yes, it was a very captivating watch. That's the perfect word for it. Mm-hmm. I will say that the season finale absolutely delivered everything that I wanted. It had me on the edge of my seat the entire time, and it certainly drove home the point that the Penguin is not anybody you should like. They wanted to make sure you absolutely knew that this was a villain by the end, regardless of how you may have sympathized with him at all. Well, it was during, and we've talked about this, you get to a point where you start to sympathize with the Penguin a little bit, and then he would do something. It was like, oh, that's horrible. And they saved the worst for last. And without going into any spoilers, I will say that there was something that I speculated on at the beginning that I was thinking they weren't going to pull the trigger figuratively and literally, and they did.
They did.
And if you don't absolutely hate the Penguin by the end of this, there's something wrong with you. Because they made absolutely sure that you hated this character.
Okay, so is he still our protagonist? Even though he's not a hero, but is he still our protagonist?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Although I do have to say, his nemesis in all of this, Miss Gigante, is certainly an equal. With how things were left at the end, I can definitely see her taking a lead role. And there's been some rumors about possibly her getting her own series. Strangely enough, she is the more sympathetic of the two, even though she is obviously a villainous type, although her situation's a little bit different.
Now, is she a DC character? Did they pull her from the pages?
Yes, she's a very minor character. She certainly had a lot more to do in the show than really she did in the comics, but they've really developed her character, and there's a lot of things from the Batman that helped to flesh out her character a little bit more, and they've left her character and her situation on a really interesting note, and I would really love to see how that develops. But like I say, it's in many cases a painful watch, and there are moments where, again, you start to fall into, oh, that's terrible, I feel so bad for Oscob. Then he would just do the most despicable thing, and you're like, F that guy. F that guy. But I would definitely recommend this series. It's some of the best writing on television for sure. And we have been given amazing television at this point. I mean, that Agatha All Along, where, very often in Marvel, they don't stick the landing so well, but I felt like they really did stick the landing with Agatha and Penguin. They definitely stuck the landing with it. Again, in many cases, it's a very brutal watch and it's a very rough watch, but it is some of the best television that's definitely out there. But I did want to spend a little bit of time singing the praises of that before I go to what's going to be I would think, the bulk of today's show.
Yes, something you've been waiting many years for, Brian. Something you are a huge fan of.
Yes.
That you wax poetically about for many years. Probably since 1995 when the book came out, that you've been singing the praises of Gregory Maguire. Is it?
Yes,
Gregory?
who wrote the book. But we are going to talk about Wicked because I did go see an early showing of it last night. I do have to ask you, I know you're familiar. I mean, you're a theater kid. It's not like you don't get to be a theater kid if you don't know at least something about Wicked.
Yes.
But have you read the book, first of all?
I've read the book.
You've read the book.
I've heard some of the music. I haven't seen it. I know a bit about it. And I've read the comparisons. Like, here's the difference between the book and the musical and a little bit about that. I couldn't, sit and tell you much about the show. I know Adina Menzel and Kristen Chenoweth, Joel Grey, but that's pretty much what I could give you about it.
Okay.
Popular and Defying Gravity. That's what I got.
Which I would say most people are definitely familiar with. And of course, those are both songs out of the first act that you will see in the movie. I am going to assume, well, at least hopefully, if you're on the fence whether you're going to see this or not, and I don't know if you are on the fence whether to see it or not, I am going to say a couple things. One, I know you don't tend to like to go to the movies. You tend to wait till things come out.
Right.
This is one of these things you should definitely see in a theater.
Okay.
I saw it in a packed theater. And I want to get into that.
Was it a theater with a warning at the beginning or a sign out front that said warning, no singing? That was a big thing.
Well,
Do not sing along.
now, I don't know if this is true or not, but I have heard a rumor that in December there will be a karaoke version of the movie
Yes, a
being
sing
released.
along. Yes, and I remember when they did that with Frozen, and I will admit that I did sing along with Rent when I went to see it. The theater wasn't packed though. I would be guilty of one of those if it was one of my beloved musicals, so I can't blame people for singing along with it, but when I heard that was hilarious.
Yeah. Funny you mentioned Frozen because there's a certain contingency out there who believes that since Disney didn't own the rights to Wicked, Frozen is basically their ripoff of it.
Huh.
Because there's definitely some very similar.
I was going to say Adina Menzel, but
Yeah.
okay.
the issue with the two sisters, and one of them is considered evil, and so there's a case to be made that Frozen is basically Disney's ripoff of Wicked, and opinions vary. But going back, I did get to see the movie in a packed theater. Again, I'm going to avoid spoilers because if you don't know anything about the movie going into it, you really shouldn't. Although I would say fans going into the movie, they're going to know the whole thing, obviously. It's not like we don't know how it's going to end, okay?
So much happened before Dorothy dropped in.
Yes. I've seen the musical live on stage 5 times, and I thought that was excessive. But I was sitting next to a group of men and women who had seen it 20 times, so I'm no great shakes.
Wow.
And there were people in the audience who had never seen it. There are people, of course, who were fans of it. So there's a wide array. And I was curious about how people who had never seen Wicked before, didn't know anything about it, how they would take it, because I'm a fan of it. And I can't really imagine what it would be like to go into that completely blind and not know, except I could try to imagine years ago when I first saw it, how it impressed me to the degree that I've gone back.
Now, when you went to see it, and were you expecting the novel, and then seeing how different it was?
Well, anytime that I'm looking at the adaptation of anything, I realize there's going to be some changes. And definitely the novel is not the book is not the novel. And for me, it's fine. Story-wise, for me personally, I enjoy the musical more than the novel. Not that I didn't enjoy
Happy
the novel.
ending.
Yeah.
Happier?
Yeah, I would say there's definitely some serious parts to this. So I want to be really careful about the spoiler side of things. I just want to give some general impressions. First of all, you should definitely go see it. You should definitely go see it in a theater. You should definitely take your sisters to go see it. You should definitely take tissues when you go see it.
Oh.
Because there are things in the movie you can do, obviously, with a close-up or with framing, cinematography that you just can't do on stage, certainly. I don't feel like the movie's going to replace the stage experience. Those are two different things any more than I think either one of those things are going to replace the book. The book's a different experience. So it's its own thing. So what I felt about the movie, there's one word to describe this movie to me: real. And what I mean by this is that it's going back to a lot of the old school Hollywood movie making that we haven't seen in a long time.
Really?
I don't know how much of the behind the scenes videos and stuff you've seen, if nothing at all.
No.
Well, here's the first thing that you're going to find surprising. There's a surprisingly large amount of not CGI in this movie. There is some CGI in this movie. We are talking about flying monkeys and talking animals. One thing I didn't know, there is a goat teacher at Shiz named Dr. Dillamond, which is Yes,
Yeah.
the goat character. Now, I don't know if you know about Dr. Dilliman. I know about Dr. Dilliman because, of course, I've seen the musical.
Mhm.
What I didn't know was Dr. Dilliman was being voiced by Peter Dinklage.
Oh, okay.
That was a shock.
Mhm.
I was like, oh my God, they got Peter Dinklage. This is
Uh-huh.
great.
So is he mocap? Is he in makeup? Is
No,
he okay?
it is a CGI goat, but it's his
Okay.
voice. One
Wow.
of the things that they've done in the movie is that the animals, they're not anthropomorphized. They can
They're really
speak.
animals.
They're
Okay.
they're legit animals.
Excellent.
You got to have CGI for that.
Mhm.
But there's a lot of not CGI in this movie. For example, the vast majority of the scenes in the movie, all the sets, they're real sets.
Wow.
They're massive sets.
Sound stages.
Yeah, but they're real sets, and some
Yeah.
of them are outside. This is a scene in the trailer, and this is toward the beginning of the movie when you see people running through this field full of flowers, this massive field. Hundreds of thousands of real flowers. Yes, that is not CGI. They absolutely created that whole thing.
Huh.
The train to Oz that's in the trailer. Real train. They built a train, and it's absolutely real. Not only that, because you had two very strong singers for your leads, they didn't lip sync the music. They sang it and it was recorded on set.
On set.
So that when you hear them singing, they're not lip syncing a track. You're actually hearing them sing while they're acting.
Wow, I'm thinking like of the scenes from Singing in the Rain where they're trying to mic them and they hear their heartbeats and they hear the breathing and stuff. I just can't even picture how they had that done. That's amazing. Wow.
Yeah. And to add to that, Cynthia Erivo, when she's doing Defying Gravity, well, she's flying on her broom when she's doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And she's singing while she's doing these they had her on a wire 30 feet, 40 feet in the air.
Mm-hmm.
She's holding onto a broom doing legit Jaeger loops. Okay. I'm not even exaggerating. Whipping around and she's singing, flipping around. And because she's in a wire harness, so you don't get hurt, they have to put you in a corset.
Mm-hmm.
So she's singing a very difficult piece at the top of her lungs, being whipped around on wires in a corset, and that's the take they're using.
Uh-huh.
I'm stunned. It's like any one of those things would be tough to deal with.
Right.
And she did it.
Mm-hmm.
And Ariana Grande was also amazing. Here's the thing that I find interesting, because I've seen some reviews and people have been surprised. It's like, obviously she's a good singer, but I had no idea she was a good actor or that she had comedic timing. Okay, well, first of all, she was a Disney kid that was in 2 sitcoms. So maybe she knows a little bit about this. Also, if you've ever seen any clips of her from Saturday Night Live.
That's what I was thinking was Saturday Night Live was when I saw her, and that's when I knew she had the chops.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Since we're going down this road, it's actually her talent that made me a little bit leery about her doing this role, which sounds weird, but let me explain.
Okay.
These clips of Saturday Night Live, if you've seen any of them, then you know that she does spot-on imitations.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Not just of people singing, but also she does impressions of people that are spot on.
Yeah, her Jennifer Coolidge. Yeah.
She's a very good mimic. And of course, she can sing like Celine Dion or Britney Spears or Shakira. And so that was a concern to me, because I thought that if anybody could do a complete imitation of Kristen Chenoweth, it would be her. Kristen Chenoweth, she could do that. And I didn't want her to do that. I wanted to see what Ariana Grande being Glinda would be. I didn't want to see Ariana Grande acting as Kristen Chenoweth.
Yes, doing an impression. Yep.
Of her doing Glinda. But the cool thing is she didn't.
Yes.
She did bring her own to this. And she was amazing. That people were shocked that she had these kind of chops is amazing to me. I mean, again, I'm an old guy. I don't listen to a lot of pop music. I wouldn't say I'm an Ariana Grande fan as far as listening to her music, but I knew she had acting chops. And now a bunch of other people know it as well.
You know what? I've stopped doubting Disney kids. Zac Efron, we just watched him last year in The Iron Claw. I've stopped doubting Disney kids. They know that whatever they do with them, train them up, they know their stuff.
Yeah. Cynthia Erivo, though, as Elphaba, she brought her own energy to this. There are things in that character I've never seen on stage. I would even say, as amazing as Adina Menzel was, as the originator of that role, there are things that Cynthia does I'd never seen in Elphaba. A lot of that definitely has to do with she's acting to a camera. You can do close-ups and things like that.
You can be subtle.
There's a lot. Yeah, this Elphaba is more subtle.
You don't have to broadcast.
Yeah, I mean, you're not projecting to the back of the theater, obviously. And there's acting that she does with just these small expressions. Her eyes, there's something that just absolutely beautiful, devastating, amazing. There's a scene at the Ozdust Ballroom that if you've seen the show, you know what I'm talking about, that it's a more intense feel because you can see expressions. There's a moment that happens in that scene, again, not going into any spoilers, that is so much more powerful because you feel like you're on the inside of it. You're not just seeing it happen. With Cynthia Erivo, if you've ever seen her work, if you know that this is a Tony-winning, Grammy-winning, Emmy-winning actor, she's got those chops. And, she's almost EGOT. And knowing that when you're dealing with a two-part movie, because this is going to be a two-part movie, that very often the Academy will wait till the second one before they...
Yeah.
But yes, you have to say that there's definitely going to be some Oscar nods. And what made me happy is because I know as far as Oscars go, there's one Oscar that you've been waiting for a long time, which is for costume design for something that's not a historical.
Yeah.
I don't know what's beating this movie for that, for a costume design. Obviously, you got to nominate a bunch of them. I'm 99% sure this is the shoe-in for that Oscar for the next one.
Yes.
Yeah, because the costuming is amazing. The cinematography is amazing. It is back to old school. But yeah, Cynthia Erivo, unbelievable acting. Ariana Grande, amazing acting. Also, and I'll go as far as to say, Oscar award winning, potentially. What's a bit complicated about this is I think what they're going to try to do is say that Cynthia Erivo, she's the lead actor, and Ariana Grande is a supporting actor. If you know the show, you know there's really two leads. But I can also understand, do you want them competing against each other, or do you want them both holding a trophy at the end, which is a possibility. Directing is definitely going to be there as a nod. Best Picture, I don't know if they win it, but I can definitely see them getting a nomination for it. I see this movie getting a bunch of nominations. It is a return to old school movie making.
Okay.
You have a huge cast of characters. You have these amazing sets. You have this escapism. You get Technicolor when it needs to be. The logo for the movie, they use the Wizard of Oz logo.
Aww.
They use that font for it. So you got those nods. Yeah. I am also going to say, again, no spoilers, but some critics have said, well, something that works against it is the runtime, because it is a long runtime. Which doesn't make any sense to me because how long have we had these big runtime movies?
Yeah.
Audience are used to that by now. Yes, I understand that the runtime for basically what's the act one of the play is longer than the entire musical. I'm glad of it because we get so much more development. I would say that the extra time is more like a seasoning. It gives you more flavor. It doesn't change anything. It doesn't really feel like things are being tacked on. I don't really feel like it screws up the pacing. I was very happy to get nearly 3 hours of this. The stuff that was added, I think, was just basically allowing some things to develop. Give us maybe a little bit more backstory, I think. You get more time with the wizard in the movie, with the wizard being Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah.
You want it. So you get extended scene. That's more of an extended scene. You get more of that, which is great because it gives you more character development. And toward the end, there's the scene that leads to the scene. When you're on stage, you got a hard cut from one scene to the next. But in the movie, you have that develop into basically a chase scene, which is, it's implied, but you get to let it breathe and you let to get it happen organically, which is amazing. And there's something that happens at the end that was something that is going to really set the scene for Act 2 or Part 2 of the movie. That was something that happened in the musical. It's talked about, but you don't get to see it. In the movie, you get to see it. And in case people are worried about padding or does this affect how the movie ends, I will say this. The movie ends at the exact same place where Act 1 ends in the musical. It cuts at that last note.
Okay.
I am also going to say there is one other, again, I don't even want to go into any spoilers about what this is, because if you haven't seen the movie yet, even if you've seen the musical, you've seen the stage play, this is something that was added. It's one song that they've expanded a little bit and in a sense gives you a little bit more lore. I'm not going to tell you what happens because you got to see it for yourself.
Okay.
But when it happened, the audience gasped, audibly gasped. And the first thing that I thought when I saw it was, Mandy is going to love this. Knowing you haven't seen the play, you haven't seen the musical, you're going to absolutely love this.
Excellent.
And if any of the Geek Watchers who have seen this, if you've listened to the show, again, I'm not going to go into any spoilers or anything. If you've listened to the show, even rather recently, if you've seen the movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I've put this in your head. You're going to know that moment. You're going to be like, oh, yes, Mandy's going to absolutely love this. Yeah, that was literally the first thought in my mind.
Okay.
I'm going to end this by saying two things. The first is that, yes, you should go see this. The second, and I think maybe a little bit more important, if you are a cishet guy, you should go see this movie. This narrative that I've seen around this movie, even men who've seen the movie and have enjoyed it, there's this narrative of, well, I'm not really the target audience for this thing. This ain't for the cishet guys. This is for the girls and the gays and the theater kids, right? No. And I really feel like this narrative of if it's not a guy lead, it's not a guy movie. It needs to go away. It's old. It's played out. If you are a cishet guy, you're going to enjoy this movie. Okay? This is a return to the old school Hollywood filmmaking, which has been very claustrophobic for a long time, and COVID had a lot to do with that. You went small cast because you had to secure the soundstage. You had to reduce contact between people. And movies, for the most part, haven't really recovered. Movies
You can have those Busby Berkeley dance scenes. Yeah.
But boy, do you have them here.
Yeah?
Dozens and dozens of people. The musical numbers, the dance scenes, they're crazy go nuts. They're massive. But this idea that because this is a movie that's very fanciful, it's got music in it, it's a musical, it has two female leads, this is not a movie that guys are going to enjoy. But I will tell you this, like I said, on the right side of me, I had a group of men and women who had seen Wicked on stage 20 times. And they loved this movie. On the left side of me, sitting right next to me, was a guy in overalls.
Aww.
Who went there with his wife, who went there because his wife wanted to see it. In dirty overalls, just got off of work.
Yeah.
Who loved this movie.
Yes, he did.
Yeah. If you're a cishet guy, if you got a girlfriend, take her. She'll enjoy it. It'll give you an excuse. But if you are just a single cishet guy and you're worried about, oh my God, what are people going to think?
You'll blend.
You'll be fine. And you'll still get to see a movie like we haven't seen in a long time. But I will say, no matter how cishet you are, bring a tissue, but be subtle. But, oh my goodness, it was an amazing film. I can't wait for you to see it because I definitely want to talk to you about it because we will have to do our spoiler side of it. Yeah. I don't know if this is going to require me to take a trip because there is an IMAX version of it.
Ooh.
But this movie, it's officially being released. Is it going to have a great opening? Is it going to break 1 billion? Is it going to join the Billionaires Club? And are you going to be able to figure out the part that I thought it was going to be your one? Well, I guess we'll see.
We shall see.
And with that said, we come to the end of episode 236. Thank you for listening and tune in next time for the latest in geek news and views with the Geek Watch podcast. From Mandy Petry, this is Brian Hatcher, reminding all the Geek Watchers out there, we're all geeky about something. Be proud of yours. See you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Geek Watch podcast. If you enjoyed this program, don't forget to like and subscribe on your preferred platform and share this podcast on your social media. For links to all the ways you can listen to the Geek Watch podcast, as well as leave comments and suggestions, visit our website at geekwatch.net. The Geek Watch podcast is a Hanging J production.